Thanks, Brother Jason.
Yes, sir.
Morning, fellow correspondents. Good morning, everybody out there. Really excited. This story is brief but powerful. It comes from the Marijuana Herald, and and the byline is, study shows CBD alleviates neurological deficits following traumatic brain injury. This is big. Traumatic brain injury, a severe clinical problem, is compounded by a lack of effective treatments, impeded intracranial metabolic waste clearance. It's the study. Cannabidiol, CBD, has the potential to address metabolic imbalances, improve cognitive functions in neurodegenerative diseases. Its specific effect on TBI is unclear. Using a fluid percussion injury model, researchers adopted a comprehensive approach that included behavioral testing, various imaging tests, cervical lymph node ligation, to evaluate CBD's effect on neurological outcomes and lymphatic clearance in a mouse model. Results demonstrated that CBD markedly enhanced motor, memory, and cognitive functions, correlating with reduced levels of detrimental neuroproteins, waste products. CBD also expedited the removal of intracranial tracers, increased cerebral blood flow, and improved tracer migration from lymphatic vessels to the DCLNs. Researchers state that, intriguingly, CBD treatment modified aquaporin 4 polarization and diminished neuroinflammatory indicators. Key observation was that disrupting efferent lymphatic channels nullified CBD's positive effect on cognitive enhancements, whereas its anti-inflammatory benefits continued regardless. Researchers concluded their study and this paper by saying, these findings suggest that CBD's ability to improve waste clearance may operate via the lymphatic system, thereby improving neurological outcomes in TBI patients. Therefore, our study underscores CBD's potential therapeutic role in TBI management. Now, this is exciting because there's other neurological diseases like MS and Parkinson's that also have to do, one of the big problems with them is waste clearance of damaged brain elements. And so if CBD can do this and has an anti-inflammatory effect, it probably has a great effect on several different neurological disorders. I know we have two doctors with us. I'm really excited to hear what the doctors say and the rest of my correspondents. This is St. Germain. First to bat on a Monday for the High at 9 News. Take it away, guys.
Man, I can't.
Yeah, this is significant. You know, there was some previous work that showed that CBD helps an outcome in various TBI models. We know that CBD has its neuroprotective properties. It acts as an antioxidant. It's fat soluble, and the brain is fatty tissue, so it very nicely can be distributed throughout the brain. But the one key thing here that you're referring to in this study is, again, this percussion model, which is looking at, how readily the brain sort of heals itself. And one thing we do know, Matthew, is that CBD in a variety of different studies now have shown to reduce neuroinflammation. And there's many mechanisms by which that happens because CBD acts peripherally on the central nervous system. But in general, what they know for cannabinoids in general, not just CBD, but cannabinoids, and particularly the cannabinoid acids, inhibit a known calcium current into cells that result in the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So we think that this could be actually the mechanism by which cannabinoids elicit their anti-inflammatory properties, but reduction of neuroinflammation post-traumatic brain injury could really be the key to survival of a traumatic brain injury event. And I'd be interested what our colleague Dr. Talleyrand has to say, but I know for a fact that, again, the government has its own patent on the neuroprotective properties of cannabidiol and other cannabinoids. So these things do quench reactive oxygenated species that are in the brain that are responsible for all kinds of bad things after injury. So I think it can only help. But I'll defer to Dr. Talleyrand, who's an actual doctor, right? I'm just a PhD
You're an
chemist.
actual doctor too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a PhD chemist, just to be known. I know a lot about how cannabinoids work in the body, but let's hear from Dr. Talleyrand, who actually sees patients.
Thanks, Dr. Mark. I agree. On the surface, this is a great news, but it's also old news. And I'm a people doctor, and I'm asking myself, so where's the study on people rather than animal models? And, people are different. CBD is pretty harmless. We agree that World Health Organization feels it's harmless. So we should be doing this study on people rather than animals. And they're dissecting. They're trying to figure out why CBD is neuroprotective or helps with the anti-inflammatory effects of traumatic brain injury. And they are trying to discover it because they're looking for molecular pathways so that they might be able to create drug agents that can mimic those pathways. But meanwhile, we have CBD, it's harmless. Those with traumatic brain injury should have access to it now rather than waiting for these animal studies to try to discover a molecular pathway for drug development. So what I'm trying to say is it's good on the surface, but it's also missing the point. Let's do some human studies. Let's do studies on NFL players who are constantly getting beat with head trauma. This is important enough to skip these animal studies and go straight to people studies.
I agree. And Doctor, my friend Paul Burnett, the COO that's trying to help me start this, or is helping me start this nonprofit that's doing exactly what you're talking about, which is doing studies on non-patentable molecules that are far less expensive, far more accessible, far less harmful. That's our big goal, is to get the donor money so we can get these studies done and get these able by insurance, able by doctors. Easy enough. His girlfriend is a doctor at UCLA. He is the head doctor in charge of this longitudinal TBI study on every NFL player to have ever played the game. And I brought up CBD and the idea for her to use CBD on these folks. Actually not allowed to because of the federal funding that UCLA gets as a teaching hospital, and the fact that CBD is still a Schedule I drug.
What?
So I know a lot of people are anti, making cannabis Schedule III. I think there are some better ideas behind doing that. But at the same time, if cannabis were to be Schedule III, UCLA, Johns Hopkins, these other teaching universities would then be okayed to not lose their funding in doing these studies. And they could actually, Talim could actually give CBD to every NFL player to ever have played.
Well,
there's lots of NIH-funded CBD studies going on. In fact, if you just go to nih.gov and you look at, you just use the keyword cannabinoid, you'll see there's over 950 trials. Not all of them are clinical trials in humans. Some of them are preclinical. And just to put in a word for preclinical trials. Preclinical trials are necessary before you take these things into humans to really understand what their safety is. It's one thing if you kill a couple lab rats, but it's certainly another thing if you kill a whole bunch of patients in a population because you don't really understand the safety of these medicines. All medicines, without exception, have been tested in animals before they were tested in humans, because researchers have very accurate animal models to basically mimic how they would work in humans. And if you try to ask the FDA to sanction clinical trials in humans without preclinical data in animals, it just doesn't happen. Now, that said, I want to just point out that at first the NFL was not interested in addressing concussion and addressing traumatic brain injury. They were just interested in the lip service to fund some highly funded groups at very large universities that already are at the NIH feeding trough that didn't need the money from the NFL. It was just lip service to say, oh, we're the NFL and we're spending money on research. Finally, 3 years or 4 years into this, they've recognized that they better start looking at traumatic brain injury and concussion. You ever watch the movie Concussion with Will Smith? You'll never watch a football game the same way again. Okay? Your vision of contact sports will change after watching that movie. The last thing I'll say, Rico, I'll let you go after this, is that They should be spending money looking at what happens to football players after they retire and they're suffering CTE. CTE is a chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which basically turns your brain into Swiss cheese, which is why some of these football players, after they've made millions of dollars for their football teams and FedEx and all the other sponsors, after they've made their millions, right, they're left to basically go out to pasture and basically lose their fucking minds because of the game that they played. So the NFL better start spending money on looking at how they could make retirement for these NFL football stars a little bit more comfortable when it comes to dealing with traumatic brain injury issues that they've suffered while they were playing the NFL. Go ahead, Rico. I'll let you go.
I'm chomping at the bit over here to talk about the NFL thing. Yeah, they tried to suppress that movie and its release. NFL knew from the late 70s about CTE. And they just started talking about it because of the hubbub that was raised in the late 90s. And we didn't get a movie about it until it was like 2010, 2015, and that came out. And then they wanted to be applauded when they put $1 million into the research. You know, your commissioner makes $44 million a year, and you're bringing in billions of dollars a year, and you put $1 million into research. But this is an absolute no-brainer. Get this to football players. No-brainer.
So, Rico, I think they're now funding some work that's going on at a Canadian university of all places, right? Looking at CBD's impact on traumatic brain injury. So that's a very recent move, just in the last, few handful of months. But I think if you Google Mary Jane and CBD and traumatic brain injury, you might get, I know our friends over at Curious on Cannabis did a podcast with that woman, and I guess she's getting money from the NFL to do some type of traumatic brain injury research. But I'll go back to what Dr. Talleyrand said. The time is now to put this into humans. We should be on the sideline right now administering CBD on a concussion. It should be happening now. They don't need to wait for any research. The research is already out there. They should be basically administering CBD after concussion at NFL games now. Period.
I mean, they should be injecting all NFL players regularly with CBD, because even just having that in your system, injecting 100%, injecting exactly, Rico. What do you want them to do?
That's dramatic.
Oh God,
guys! Jason and I have been injecting CBD together for about a year now.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
We've been mainlining.
We don't share needles though.
No, no. There's no needle exchange here.
These are the public injection sites that you've been talking about.
I think we should turn all the harm reduction centers into treatment centers for the NFL players and inject them with CBD. How about that?
Yeah, just get a CBD drip. Is that what
Yep. Keep it drippy.
Why stop there at LSD?
Oh man, you know what? And on that,
that's the profit I'm talking about.
Yeah, oh boy, we're gonna go to a commercial. We're gonna be right back.